Hello, I'm Sister Rose Therese, and I'm with the Sisters of the Third Order St. Francis in East Peoria, Illinois. And some of you probably stopped by our booth at a vocation fair or something and picked up this little kit. So today I'm just going to walk you through a little bit about the cross stitch itself and tell you a little bit about our religious habit also. So let's begin by opening up the packet here. So what's inside, there's a little picture of what the cross stitch is supposed to look like when it's done. Some instructions here on for the pattern. So that would be, there's two sides. One side is for those that are new to cross stitch, and it just has two basic stitches on it, the cross stitch and the back stitch. And on the other side is a slightly more complex pattern for those that have a bit of experience with cross stitch, and it also has some French knots and some half cross stitches, so that it rounds up the corners a little bit, a little less square looking. So first of all, okay, so we've got our thread here and our material here. Now I haven't included a hoop for the embroidery, mostly because I find Aida cloth, which is what this is so stiff already that I don't really need it. If you feel that you'd be more comfortable with a hoop, you can try it, but we'll try a few practice stitches and I'll show you how I do the cross stitch, and you can decide for yourself whether you think you're going to need a hoop or not. So we're going to start by dividing our thread, and I'm going to try one brown thread. We're just going to do a few practice stitches. So the first thing you do when you get your thread is you're going to separate it. And you have to separate it one thread at a time, because you're going to want these we're going to stitch with 3 threads together for the cross stitch. And you want these 3 threads to lie flat together and not be twisted around, so they'll cover the fabric more. And they actually split up very easily, so all you do is you grab one of the little threads here and you hold it at the top, okay? And you pull, and it's going to pull it all the way up, but then it just comes all down, so nothing tangles up. So we've got one, I'll lay that out, we'll pull up a second one, and we'll lay that out, and a third. All right, so we got 3 threads. We'll set this one aside, and you're going to take these 3, well, maybe I should get a little closer so you can see. Hold on a minute. Okay, so we have separated our 3 threads. I'm going to line them up, line up the ends. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so pinch them together and smooth them together. Okay. Now to thread the needle. Now the needle that is included in the kit is a gauge 26 tapestry needle, and tapestry needle has this long eye and a blunt end, so it makes it easy when working with Aida cloth because it'll slide nicely through the holes, but it won't pierce the fibers. Okay, so to thread the needle, because we're working with 3 threads and the eye here isn't very wide, I find the easiest way to thread the needle is just by taking the ends together, pinching them closely in your fingers, so you can just barely see anything through your fingers. Then you're going to take the eye of the needle and you're going to push it down between your fingers as you're pinching, and just kind of slide the thread through. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try it. I'll show you again. So we're pinching, so you can just barely see any thread there. Slide that through. Okay, when you get it, pull it through. It's pretty simple. So we have our needle threaded. Now cross stitch, we will work from the left to the right, and you start in the bottom corner of the stitch, and you work the first half of the row, and then you come back. So you kind of have to do a little bit of planning when you look at your pattern to figure out where you're going to start, and which colors you're going to start with and how you're going to carry the threads over, because you don't generally want to carry dark threads too much behind the lighter colored stitching, because it might show through, and you don't want a whole bunch of loose threads running through the back of your fabric. This is one that I've completed already. So there you see the cross stitch and the back stitches. In the back, you try and keep that as neat as possible, and try not to have any threads running over areas that have not been stitched. Again, sometimes there's not much you can do about avoiding having some dark go under, an area that's embroidered in light color, but you don't want to run that black thread through those stitches, because it's even more likely to show through then. Also, with cross stitch, you always want to do the cross stitches first before the back stitch. The back stitch, French knots, those are things that you finish up with at the end. So let's do one practice. Now there's different ways people will do stitching. Personally, I don't like to use a hoop with Aida cloth. Aida cloth is pretty stiff, so and I find I also like to work from the top. I don't like to push it through and turn it around and push it through again, or try and find the hole from the back. So I like to take it in one stitch. If you feel more comfortable doing it the other way, there's plenty of other videos out there that'll show you how to do those stitches, and if you have trouble figuring it out yourself. First of all, to start a thread, I prefer to run the thread under the fabric a little bit. You'll see on the Aida cloth, if you look closely, there are bars of 2 threads that go across each square, depending on which direction. But it's very easy just to slide the thread under those 2 threads to anchor the thread on the back. So that's what I normally do. This is the way I start across, start a thread, and the way I end a thread, and also often the way I carry a thread across the back of the fabric. To anchor the thread, I would normally want to put the thread under, let's say about 6 stitches, somewhere around 1 inch, something like that. That's plenty of an anchor. So we got our needle through there. I'm going to pull through. Start. And leave just a little bit hanging out the back. Now again, we're going to want to start the bottom left-hand corner. And I've done it wrong. So we'll just turn it over, because this is just practice anyways. Okay, so the bottom left corner would be here. Alright, and we will be stitching in this direction. Now, you don't want to pull the stitches too tight, because you can warp the fabric, but you do want to keep them close. Sometimes I use my thumb just to kind of guide the threads over, so that it'll stay close, and it'll smooth out these 3 threads so they're not twisting as you stitch. It makes it a little easier to pull it close without pulling the fabric. But once you get the feel of it, you might not find you need that. Okay, so the first stitch. We're starting in the bottom, go across to the top right corner, so that's where your needle goes in, and I'm just going to push the needle through the right straight down to the next hole, and that's where we'll be starting the next stitch. So this way we can work the entire stitch from the top of the fabric without having to worry about turning the fabric over or trying to find a hole. And then you get it all in one motion rather than in 2. So it works up pretty quickly. You want to make sure as you're stitching that you don't stick your needle through the loop of the thread, it'll catch and look funny. All right, pretty simple, right? So that is the first half of our cross stitch. To make the second half, very simple, we're just going to go back. So you do that same motion from the top to the bottom. Catches on that. Cross stitch, especially when you're going over large areas of one color, can be rather meditative. Certainly easily to pray as you're doing cross stitch. Sometimes I do a little prayer, for each stitch, something like Jesus, Mary, I love you, save souls, or my Jesus, mercy. Okay, now this one, I brought the thread out here, but if I were going to start another row, I'd actually want to bring the thread out one stitch below. Okay, so I'll do 2 stitches in this row, and then I'll start another row just so you can see that again. So 1, 2, and back up. And if I were to start another row, I bring it down right down there. Okay. Now, so most of the pattern is all done in that cross stitch. The lines are in back stitch. Back stitch is very easy. It does require a little bit of thinking. It's called back stitch for a reason. You actually, let's say I want to stitch in that direction. So this, I'd want to go back, and I bring the thread out where I want the next stitch to end. Okay? And you work a line in this way. So you're putting the needle back. It kind of makes loops around the thread, or around the fabric, so you're kind of doing this. So very simple. Now, when following the pattern, there's no set indicators for where a backstitch will begin or end, but you may see like here, it goes from corner to corner. Normally in our back stitches with cross stitch, you're working in the holes of the fabric, so that would be natural, beginning and end. Here, the next place it intersects at a hole would be right there under that V, so that'd be over 4 stitches, so you'd make that in one long stitch. You don't generally want to take stitches that were, I'd say 6 would probably be the limit as far as how many squares you want to carry it over, because it'll tend to catch on things. So all those dark black lines are our back stitch, and this one little dotted line is a back stitch also, but in silver color for the cross. Now these half crosses, I will show you some of that too, just so you know. I think most of you will probably not be using the half crosses, but it's a way to sort of round the corners. So if I were working, let's say this one here, okay, so you don't want to cover the whole square, you want to cover this bottom half of the square in the black, okay? So again, we always start bottom left, work top right, so that all the crosses go in the same direction. It doesn't look all messy when you turn the fabric. So our first stitch will be across this corner and a down, just with what the regular one we did. The second part, instead of going all the way over to this corner, we're going to want to push it through the middle of the fabric of that square. Okay? So it makes basically a little triangle. Now, and the direction the triangle faces will depend on the angle that you're trying to get on the pattern. And the French knot, I'll show you here, is indicated by those asterisks. And I would do those, especially in this, right over the cross stitch, just because the pink fabric might show too much through on the darker. So we're going to go around twice. So again, we take the thread, loop it around twice like that, and you're almost sticking it right back in the same hole. I might do a little bit over, okay? And you pull it through. Might want to put your thumb there just so it doesn't all come out. And that makes a little kind of round ball, almost looks like a bead. Some of them may be right in a square. Actually, probably most of them are right in the middle of the square rather than in a hole. Again, so we up through the hole, up through the middle, there. Wrap it around. And stick it back through almost the same spot, not exactly. Right close to where it came out. Okay, so those are the basic stitches. And I will probably work through the rest of the pattern for you, with you later. Just keep an eye out on our YouTube channel. I hope you find this enjoyable, and we'll see you another time. God bless. Bye-bye.